Welcome to the Guides Angle, a full-time fishing guide's view on all things related fishing, both fresh and salt water, where we discuss interactions with customers, the behind-the-scenes day-to-day grind, and even, yes, things we like and don't like within the guide business. I'm your host, Michael Littlejohn, with co-host Terry, and sit back now, relax, enjoy, and let's get right into this week's episode. You know, we need to order some Costa sunglasses because I can tell that we are low on Costa.
Yes, not great because they're polarized.
And looking around, we have some other stuff that we need to get in the store as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree.
Mid-February, the rush is soon.
Yeah.
Spring break is literally around the corner. I wonder how many people.
It literally is around the corner.
It's a month away, right at it.
Yeah, right at a month.
So people aren't going to, they're going to get 2 weeks from now. They're going to go, what are we doing for spring break? So,
And the fishing's going to get crazy.
Yep.
People.
Fishing kind of already is crazy.
Sure. Yeah. You had like an 81 on your boat the other day?
We had a 69 on the first day.
Yeah.
Little man caught it.
Oh, yeah. Cute little kiddo.
I was texting the group asking what the junior record was.
Yeah.
And it was a couple pounds short. It was a 69.
73, right? 72.
72 and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next day, which was yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah.
No, yesterday was Sunday. So you're Saturday.
Saturday, we had an 81.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So it was, yeah.
It's like 6 pounds off the lake record.
It was a good fish. It's funny. I don't know what came up or how it came up on the boat, but I think we've only landed maybe 6 or 7 80-pound class fish on the boat ever.
I had 2.
Oh, you had 2?
Yeah, I had 2. Remember the people from West Texas, the woman that came down?
Yeah.
We got 2 80s back to back. They're both like.
You had them on the same day?
Yeah, back to back. One was like, we're fishing deep. And
when you say fishing deep, are you talking about being secret when you say that? Is that why you stuttered a little bit?
A little bit. Yeah, we were fishing deep. They're from Midland. Remember the couple?
I have never in my life ever caught back to back high 70s or low 80s.
One was like a 78, 79, and one was like 80. Yeah, back to back. Matter of fact, then maybe they'll listen to this podcast because I actually had found out like a couple of years later that they were actually in the newspaper and talked about us.
Hey, do you remember the time that you broke the junior record, smashed it with Rainy?
Rainy.
And you literally, smashed it.
Hell, it'd still be the lake record today.
And
state record.
And literally took pictures, got verified weights and all that stuff, but never crossed your mind.
Never.
That you had the state record in the boat. Here she is. It took like 3 people to hold that fish up. Little Rainy, I think she's playing college softball now.
Yeah.
From what I heard. But state record fish, my wife just
crazy
catches it, takes pictures of it, brags about it, and then throws it back.
Yeah, dude.
Throws it back, and then all of a sudden, about an hour later, when you started sending me pictures, because I was on the water that day too, and my wheels started turning like, hey, wait a second, that might be a record. And then, yep. Oh, well,
I felt bad too.
Is what it is.
But we were so excited. I think I was just kind of shocked that she was so excited. I got the whole thing on video.
I have to say that was a magical moment because she appreciated that as much as any kid has ever appreciated a fish.
She just giggled.
The video, because that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Even when I watched the video, her smiles and like her, like, it's just, she's freaked out holding that.
Her mom was so excited for her. So it was awesome because her, mom was there. And so.
Yeah. And what was also cool about it is you were on anchor and y'all had already caught a few big fish. And it was just I
remember fishing was tough that day. And then we finally got on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
deep anchoring.
Speaking of lake records, we haven't announced it yet, but there's a lake record that we need to announce pretty soon.
Which one?
A couple weeks ago, there was a lake record caught in the form of a hybrid.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And we'll have to announce that soon. So
true.
Stay tuned because we have to announce that record. We've been kind of holding back a little bit, but anyways, we need to do that. So
So what were you thinking talking about today? We're gonna sit here and we're just gonna chit chat.
Well, I'm excited about tonight's episode. We've got a lot of stuff. This is the Guides Angle podcast,
Guy thing.
the fishing guides. I kind of like the ring of the Guides Angle from a fishing guide's perspective. I don't know. So
We're good. We're good.
yeah,
I have to make a new cover page.
it's pretty exciting though, because
Switching.
tonight we're gonna really talk about the behind the scenes life, or the behind the scenes moments that the fishing guide deals with on the daily. So I think today we're going to go back and forth and talk about what like a fishing guide's day looks like from the time or right before he gets up.
Let's start. Yeah, I was about to say let's start.
Yeah.
Let's start the night before.
And
Good place to start.
and kind of what we're going to walk everyone through, at least what our day looks like, and all of the challenges that we face on the day to day, things that maybe some people forget about. It's going to be our chance to kind of like whine a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people want to know like how it all works.
Yeah. And also kind of, we're going to walk through, how we feel like, right before we see customers.
Yeah.
And
Let's just
how nervous we are, like, and all that stuff. So anyways,
let's get into it. Let's just get into it.
well, I can say this, that I have probably the biggest reset button when it comes to these fishing trips as you can get. I really like, and the way I look at it is every single customer deserves the best fishing trip that they could possibly get.
Sure.
I don't look at my list, because like I'll look at my calendar out like a month and I'll be like, okay, this person's fished with us before, that person's fished with us before, but these three people right here, I don't even know who they are, and then you go in and you look at their bookings and they look, have you fished with us? No, you never fished with us before, so you don't really know what their expectations are. When you fish with someone for a while, multiple times, you kind of know what their expectations are. You can kind of go back in your mental file, and know about what kind of fish they've caught, stuff like that. And you kind of know, because the truth is really, I always want the next fishing trip that someone books with us to be better than the last one.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, on us. We put on ourselves, as guides, we put it on ourselves.
Yeah.
So we want to do that for our customers.
Yeah. And, and so when I know I've got a trip the next day, I don't know if I'm guilty of this or if it's just something that kind of takes over on me, but I go kind of into a mental mode. Oh, what am I going to do tomorrow to make sure this is the best fishing trip that they've ever had in their life? And I don't know, it definitely, it kind of drives my nerves, especially in the evening, night before you're cooking dinner typically, and that kind of thing. And I'm already starting to think weather patterns, wave direction. How did I do today? How did I do yesterday? And it's kind of already getting me on edge a little bit. Especially if I've got conditions that are changing and, weather patterns that are changing. It's crazy how the weather goes so much into how I feel like the next day is going to be, So, and it's funny, you are as much into weather as I am.
I think that's one thing that we kind of liked about each other, because I was like, look, there's a, chance of tornadoes tomorrow, and unlike the normal people, we're like, we need to, look at the weather and watch it and see where it's coming, when it's going to hit and all that. And we're into weather patterns and things.
Yeah. Even like, when I was in high school, people ask me in high school all the time, so what are you going to be when you grow up? People always ask that question. And I always said the same thing. I'm going to be a meteorologist. That's what I really thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be a TV forecaster. I thought I'd be like,
good job for you.
I thought I was going to be like the Channel 8, Troy Duncan.
Yeah, Pete Delkus.
Troy Duncan was my guy, bow tie Troy. And, I've always been fascinated with weather. So it's kind of fit into my career as a fishing guide because it really plays into. But so really the night before the trip, and this plays into, I don't know, typically the way fishing guides work is that, they own their own business. Most fishing guides don't work for an outfit, but the truth is that it doesn't really matter whether you work for a business that is a guide service, or if you're a sole proprietor and you're your own guide. The night before really begins all the preparation for your trip. It really goes into, the work starts either after the trip, the day before, just getting all your stuff together and getting it ready so that you don't have to work on it at nighttime.
Yeah.
Or, you can just, you can wing it the next day, which I've done that before, and that's never cool. Well, this all goes into the whole mindset thing of the fishing guide is people say, well, how do you, fishing guides, are they just like, lay fishermen? Are they just like, civilian fishermen? And I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how serious lay or civilian fishermen get, but for me, laying in bed at night and studying the
topography,
and then I know in Navionics is an app on your phone. And if you don't have Navionics installed on your phone, you need to install it because, and there's some other, Garmin now owns, I actually bought Navionics, I think a year or two ago. So now it's a Garmin based, chart. And just so you know, a map is something you look at from land, and a map belongs to land. A chart belongs to water. So you don't want to say, hey, I'm studying the map of the lake. There's no such thing as the map of the lake. It's a chart. It's your chart.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of one of those weird things.
I learned that in captain school, y'all.
Well, guys, it's one of those things kind of drives me nuts when I hear something about, hey, man, have you looked at the map lately? I'm like, it ain't no map now. It's a chart.
Okay.
So, but
I agree.
So, yeah, laying down at night or the afternoon before and studying your Navionics or studying your chart on your phone, it really, even though it's a lake I've fished for 20 plus years.
On the daily, yeah.
I can take the information that I have at hand, which the south wind's been blowing now for a couple days in the same direction. And I start looking at that chart and I start zooming in on contour lines and I start noticing things that stick out to me that are just begging me to come fish them. If I've got a trophy blue catfish trip the next day, or I've got an eater blue cat trip, or I've got, it's an early season hybrid striper white bass trip, and I know the fish are in shallow water, they're going to be up where that wind has been blowing, but they're not going to be, in areas where there's not big drop-offs. They're going to be in the areas where the points and stuff drop off really, really fast. So I study, even though there are certain areas of the lake that tend to fish better than others, I study that stuff the night before to get a really strong confidence or a feeling of confidence of where I want to start my day the next day.
Right.
So
I think one of the things that I would do, and similar, is that I would take my radar on my phone, especially if I had a trophy trip, and I would look at the wind direction and go, hey, where's this wind been blowing, and which direction is it going to be blowing, and where am I going to start my trip? And so I used my radar for that, to look at the wind direction. And then I'd use Navionics to look at, kind of overlay in my mind. I would overlay the wind and that, Navionics in my mind and figure out, because that would be my biggest thing is at night. I couldn't sleep hardly because I would be like,
Well, and, so just like what you're talking about right now, maybe there's people listening to this episode right now and they're going, wait a second, these guys have been spending 15 minutes talking about the night before. They hadn't even got to the morning of. Well, but that's the point, is that there's a lot to have a successful fishing trip. It starts days before.
Right.
Now for the fishing guide like us that fishes every single day, there's some advantages because we're on the water every day and we're watching the lake evolve. We're watching the lake change. We're seeing it change in front of our eyes. So there's an advantage. But for someone that hasn't fished the lake for 3 or 4 days or a month or 2 months, you got to really start, even a fishing guide, he's got to start way before he gets to the lake.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things that are happening weather-wise, wind direction, cold fronts, warm fronts.
This is just all mental prep. This isn't including everything else. So let's talk about this. So I think they're getting, the work that we do in our minds the night before. And assuming you had a trip, your boat's clean, it's ready, all your gear's in your boat, what time is, let's say it's live bait season and it's, June. What time do you get up? What time does the fishing guide get up, and why do they get up so early?
Well,
what's your routine?
I mean, you've already reached out to your customer 2 days before. You've explained to them that we're going to leave the dock at 6:30 in the morning. Oh, okay. So if you're going to leave the dock at 6:30 in the morning, then you have to ask yourself the question: what time do I want to be done with everything? Right?
Done getting everything ready for your trip.
Yeah. So because when your customer gets to the lake,
there's so much involved.
When your customer drives through the gate and he pulls up to the dock or wherever the ramp or wherever you're meeting your customers, you don't want to be still working on stuff.
Right.
You don't want to be clearing your boat, moving rods out of the way, getting ice chest filled. You want to be sitting in your boat. If you're meeting your customers at the boat, you want to be sitting in your boat on your phone, looking at Facebook or whatever it is that you do, chilling. Listen to a podcast, doing something other than being busy. You need to be mentally preparing yourself to go to battle. And, so that's how I try to gauge what time I get up is, okay, if I want to be sitting in my boat or sitting in the store at Open Water Lodge or whatever, if I know my customers are going to be rolling up around 6:15, because they're never, if the trip starts at 6:30, they typically are, they're typically there sometime around 6:10 to 6:15. So I want to be done by 6:10. So that, so I start working backwards. Well, I know I need an hour to catch bait, because can I catch bait in 10 minutes? Yeah. Most of the time that's how long it takes to catch bait, 10 or 15 minutes. But there's always that day that the bait doesn't respond to the light that we put out, or they're not, up against the concrete where you think they are, or the wind changed and now it's super windy and the bait is really hard. So then that one day that you showed up late to work, now you're behind the 8 ball the whole morning trying to get ready for the trip. And then, you're frazzled. So I typically will hit my snooze once, and then I always roll over after the second time it goes off. And I grab my phone, and the first thing I do every single morning is I pick up my phone, and I try not to wake you up. So I kind of lean over to one side, and I hit my radar. Literally
what I did.
Literally within seconds of me waking up.
We're not sponsored by My Radar, y'all.
I pull it up, and it takes a second to load. And then I zoom in, I look at the lake, I look at the isobars on the wind pattern, and I look and see what the wind's doing. And I kind of like the very first feeling I get of how my day is going to go starts right there. And I look at it. I mean, and this is in the first 10 to 15 seconds of me waking up. Right. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, she's doing what she's supposed to do. Yeah. Or it's like, oh God, east wind blowing right into the ramp. It's going to be hard to launch the boats this morning. I wonder if Jeremy, I wonder if Noel, I wonder if they're, wonder if they got super early this morning, they're already there, struggling to get their boats in the water or whatever the situation is. But, so that's the first thing that goes through your mind. I'm a coffee drinker. So, I stumble through, obviously, using the restroom to running into the kitchen and, putting the stuff in the Keurig.
I just got to say this. It's so funny how customers, like when they come down to the boat or we get in the boat and I'm like, oh, did y'all have your morning coffee? 9 out of 10 guys would be like, nope. Oh, y'all don't drink coffee? Oh, no, we drink coffee. Oh, we didn't drink it today. And the reason they don't drink it is why you think they don't drink it.
Oh, because they're afraid
that's why they won't eat.
Afraid they're going to pee on the boat.
No. Or have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, like have a Code Brown?
Yeah, Code Brown.
Oh, man, I drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah, but I just think it's funny that it happens a lot.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you get up and usually you've got your lunch packed or whatever and you head to the lake. Oh, we're only like 6 miles from the lake. 6 minutes?
Yeah, I have 2 stop signs that...
love the country life, y'all.
2 stop signs.
Yeah.
I go through 1, 2 stop signs on the way to work, of which sometimes I stop at one, and then the other one I definitely don't ever stop at, hardly. because it's just at that time of morning, there's literally, you can see a mile in every direction. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I kind of slow down, but it's like, so we keep the boats here at the lodge. Mm-hmm. So I don't,
that makes things so much.
I'm driving to work without a boat, which is really, really nice.
Yeah. So get up, get here, get the boat launched. And you're always, when you get here and you get the boat, you're checking to make sure you've got running through your mind if I've got everything I need today. Like if we're trophy catfishing, I used to have it. Can't remember the word I would use, but I took the first letter of everything I knew I needed, like net, knife, scale, bait. I don't remember the word I made with that, but it's like,
my goodness, scale. Did you really?
Yeah. And I never forgot those things. Oh,
wow.
Because if you get out there on a trophy catfish trip and you're trying to wrestle in a 30-pound fish minimum, or whatever, and you've got to stick a pair of grips in their mouth. I did that a couple of times in the beginning, and after that, I was like, nope, I'm not gonna forgive me.
Yeah, there's definitely it's like one of the worst feelings ever when you are actually on a trip and you get to where you're going, and then you turn around like this has happened to me a couple of times. I have a funny Daniel story too. I'll share here in just a second, but the very first time one of the first times that I did a baited catfish hole trip, it was at the rocks where, we anchored and all that kind of stuff. And anchoring on the rocks is not easy to do. I mean, it's not hard, but it just takes a lot of time. And so I got the boat anchored. I mean, I nailed it. It was windy. It took me a while for me to get everything just right.
I remember what you were saying.
Not only did I get anchored, I got all my my grain poured out, right over once, because you do it after, you always grain out after you get anchored. So, because you want your grain to fall right where your boat's going to be.
You're going to be fishing.
And I mean, I got everything, and the guys are excited. Customers are pumped up. And then I turned over my other shoulder, and I went to grab my bait, and then I realized immediately that I had no bait.
Yeah.
And I had to pull the anchors. I had to, which took forever. And then and you had to turn and tell the customers what happened.
Yeah.
But you had to do it because there's no trip without the bait.
Yeah.
So, that's just, and that has happened.
And he's talking about prepared bait, over a baited catfish hole.
Yeah.
In this reference.
Right. Well, Daniel, when Daniel worked with us, his very first trophy catfish trip, I remember the customers, it was so funny. He was so excited. He was nervous, and he ran his trip. He got all the way out. He was trophy catfishing, and he got all the way out there, and he left his bait chest on the dock, and he had his shad. He had all his bait, and everything.
Done that once.
Ready to go. I know we all have. It's, and it's not always that, it's, Noel's, he's good about forgetting his net, his trophy catfish net, and Griffin, so it's just, that's part of kind of what happens. You try to play it off as best you can, but deep down inside, you're really upset at yourself.
Yeah. If you're on a trophy trip, and when we say trophy trip, we're talking about catfishing, big catfish, big blues. And the worst thing is if you show up without a scale, if someone catches a big fish and they pay a lot of money for those trips, they really want to know what that fish weighed. You can't hold it and go, well, it looks like a 50. No, but anyway.
Yeah, and that, or, sometimes the batteries die on the scale or whatever. For me, the biggest thing on a trophy catfish trip is the net. Because the problem is that, if you forget the net and you've got a really good fish and you're sitting there fighting that fish on the side of the boat,
yes,
and then all of a sudden the fish pulls off after floundering around on the surface for 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And then that was the one big fish of the day for this customer. And then it comes off because you didn't have a net. That's a big deal. Yeah. And, I don't know that I've ever lost a fish at the boat because I didn't have a net, but it could definitely happen.
Yeah. It's just like our rigs, when we were tying our leaders and all that stuff, it's a big deal. Everything has to be perfect because if that line pulls, or if that hook pulls from the line or whatever,
oh my God,
the customer will look. These fishermen will look at your line and see what happens, and they're going to.
There is no worse.
Know how to tie a knot.
There's no worse feeling than when a hook pulls out of the fish's mouth. Which, if that happens, that's fishing. But if you reel it in and the hook's gone, and you have the curly cue on the end of the line, which is indicative of the hook pulling out because your knot wasn't tied right, or you tied the wrong knot, or whatever the deal was.
It's a horrible feeling.
That is a horrible feeling. I can honestly say that happened to me once in Port O'Connor. on a giant snapper, and I normally snell my knots.
Yeah.
And I was in a hurry, and I tied just a regular tri-lane knot, just a regular improved, clinch. And I didn't wrap it enough times. I was in a hurry. I had other fish in the boat. We were on a wide open bite. And we hooked into a monster, and we fought it forever. And it was going to be a huge snapper. And I actually had color on the fish, and it pulled out. And
oh, it's a terrible.
I know this when it came up, I saw it, but I just kind of grabbed the leader, and I kind of pulled it aside and wanted to make sure the customer didn't see that it had a big curly Q on it. And I don't think they ever do.
That doesn't happen very often though, because he's like OCD. He's like almost like anal about all this stuff. He would literally just drive me nuts. I would get prepared the night before for my trips, and then I would see him going over there, checking my lines, checking my hooks. Hey, babe, this hook, you need to put another hook on there that's, the barb's broke. Or, hey, babe, you need to put another hook on there. It's not sharp enough.
So, yeah, we just need to get a file.
Or in your line, I'm like, all right.
Well, you just,
I want to provide the best trip.
You just never know. You get that really big fish on. Jeremy had a monster on 2 days ago, and the leader broke. So, it was one of those things where.
That's where, like Michael does this thing. He calls it around the world. So when we have and the reason we're talking so much about trophy fishing isn't because that's all we do. It's because that's what we're in right now. That's what we're doing right now. So that's what we're talking about. But like you came out, and I don't know if you made that word up or not, but around the world, do you know what I'm talking?
Sure, yeah.
So like we would take the hook, and if you don't do it, and if you work for us and you're a guide and you don't do it, I promise you, you'll catch it from a picture or a video or on your boat with binoculars, and then you're going to be in trouble. You're not going to want to hear it. But basically, tell everybody what around the world.
Well, it's just, there's two different ways to store, when you go from A to B, or when you go from your boat ramp to wherever you're going, you store, especially if you're live bait fishing, or if you're trophy catfishing, your weights are absolutely horrible on your rods. They're just horrible. And so most people will hook their hook either on their first eye of their rod, or they'll hook their hook on the hook catcher down below, and they'll just tighten them up, but their weights are about mid rod up, or they're even up a little higher up.
Yeah.
The problem is, everybody says, well, okay, what's the big deal about that? Well, I'll tell you what the big deal is.
Tell us what the big deal is.
The big deal is that when you're driving to your spot, those weights are sitting there, and they are bouncing up against your rod. And they are nicking your fiberglass, and they are wearing down those rods. And over time, you're going to get a fish on, and your rod is going to have a weak spot in it because of all the times that your weights bounced up against your rods. So what you do is you just simply take your hook, and you go up to the second eye. Yeah, this is just a little tip. This works so well. And plus, when you store your rods, they won't tangle up together either. But you just take your hook, go up to the second eye from the bottom. So count 1, go to 2, and then hook your hook around the base of the eye. Don't hook it in the eye, because you got that ceramic insert. Or even if it's just solid steel, it's still going to nick it a little bit and create a little spot where you can cut your line. But just take your hook and hook it around the base of the eye, and then just simply hit your button on your reel and let that line come down, and just take your leader and your swivel of your main line and just lay it over the top of your reel, and then tighten up. And what will happen is that weight will now sit below your reel. And as you go down the lake, your weights, whether you have drifting weights, whether you have regular, bell weights or egg sinkers or whatever, they'll all rest below your reel, and they won't beat up anything. They won't beat your rod up. They won't beat your reel up. They won't beat anything up. And when you bundle them and you store them overnight or for the week or wherever you store them, when you store them, all those weights are down below your reel, and they're not sitting there mid rod, spinning around, twisting on the lines and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a good tip. It's something I learned a long time ago, and it protects your rods.
Did you just?
No, I come up with around the world. The world is the reel, and you just go around the world. But, so yeah.
I thought it might have been something
no.
Social media wasn't even out when you started guiding. I doubt that you might have got it on Fishing Forum. Used to be on the Texas Fishing Forum. And remember that?
Man, the Texas Fishing Forum, I learned so much from the Texas Fishing Forum. I really did. Well, it was the only place you could go and listen in kind of a social way, listen to how other people were fishing and find out what other people were catching. There was no other way. There was no other way. You didn't have any other, the newspaper or magazines.
Yeah.
That was it.
Everything was old.
So yeah, this fishing forum, my handle on the Texas Fishing Forum was Catfish Salsa. And,
Catfish salsa.
So, but yeah, those were great years.
Yeah.
But,
you gotta, I think like now with social media and, YouTube and everything, I feel like it's such a great avenue to learn, Yeah. You can learn to do anything.
You can, but you have to position yourself to learn.
Right.
Because unfortunately, a lot of men are prideful. A lot of men, they already know what they're doing. They already know the best way to do this, and they know the best way to anchor, and they know the best way to catch live bait, and they know the best bait tank, and they know the best. So why do I need to learn? Well, if you get to that place where you think you are God's gift to fishing and guiding, then you probably are up against a wall.
Yeah.
And you've got to position yourself where you might be good at what you do, and people might tell you that you're good at what you do, but you need to believe, at least this is the way I think, is that you need to believe there's a ton more that you need to improve on and you need to learn.
Always learning.
Because I feel like it's almost like 10 years ago, I was a better fisherman than I am now in some ways.
Yeah.
It's like there's certain things that I did
for sure.
that I did 10 years ago. I felt like that I could pull up and shallow water fish and like fish on anchor for big trophy blue catfish. I feel like I did better 10 years ago than I do now. And I don't know if it's just a confidence thing, because I drift more than I used to, or, or whatever. I don't know what it is, but it's funny. You gotta keep learning, and you learn from mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes. And, and always keep your head down and just keep working to try to get better at your craft. And like you said a while ago, there's so many channels now to learn from, meaning, social media, pictures, listen to people talk, all those kinds of things. So,
so one thing I was curious about, but someone had asked me the other day, I was talking to them on the phone, they were, booking a trip, kiddos on the boat, new fishermen on the boat. How do you go about coaching clients on the boat? Like, is it through teaching them, showing them, telling them, having patience? Like, what is your theory on?
Well, that's a good question, because you can't put everybody in the same box.
Yeah.
You just can't. Oh, well, you can. And I think a lot of guides do that. A lot of guides try to put all their customers in the same box and basically say, this is the way I'm going to run my trip today. And they're just going to have to adapt the way I run my boat, the way I run my trip.
Right.
And I think that's futile thinking. That's the wrong way to run a guide trip. You need to really quick find out what your skill level is for your customers, what their expectations are, and then try to deliver a trip that's going to meet their needs for the trip. And let me give you an example of what I'm trying to say. If you're on a big fish bite of big hybrids, but you're not catching a bunch of them, but man, the ones you're catching are monsters, and and it makes you as a guide look really good that you're smoking down, or you're coming in with these, 12, 13 pound fish or whatever the deal is. But you're only catching 6 or 7 of them, and you're having to fish most of the trip to do that. And then you've got a family that really never fishes. This might be one of the only times they ever book a trip. They've saved up for half the year, and they've got 3 young kids, a mom and a dad. And they, their experience with fishing is that, when they were young, the parents, their grandparents took them to a pond and they caught, catfish from the bank.
Right.
The guide that has already made the decision before the customer showed up that he's going out to spend his 4.5-hour half-day trip to catch 8 or 9 giant stripers or hybrids, that may not be the best trip to give this family,
Right.
because that means they're going to be waiting a long time between bites. And it also means that there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 of the kids that may only reel 1 fish in.
Yeah.
So really, you're asking about how do I go about it? I look at the overall feel of the customer, what their expectations are, if they're just wanting to catch fish and just catch a lot of fish, then I'm going to suggest that we go channel catfishing on a baited hole, or we're going to go white bass fishing where they can, use, small slabs and fish vertical, because I know that it's probably going to be difficult for them to throw spinning rods away from the boat. Swim bait bites, a little more technical, things like that. So, and that's what's neat about kind of what we do is we do a multi-species feel for our business. And we do that for a lot of reasons. One of them is for the reason that we're talking about, is that we get a lot of customers that just are new to fishing. This is something that they're basically trying on to see if it's something that their family would enjoy. And I have been there. I have delivered a trip that I thought would be a really good trip. And yes, we caught some really big fish, but it was a very slow trip. And at the end of the day, the customers weren't near as excited about that trip as they would have been catching 1 pound sand bass, but catching them over and over and over again. So you have to get a feel for your customers, and you can't be selfish. It's not about you. It's not about the guide. And I feel like listening, to other guides talk, I feel like in a lot of ways, because here's what I hear. I don't know if you hear this, you would probably, because you talk to a lot more people on the phone than I do.
Right.
But I hear guides talk about how, well, I don't want to go catch those catfish, or, I don't want to catch sand bass. I only want to catch hybrids. Or, and it seems like it's about them. It's about the guide.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wait a second, you're trying to tell me that at the end of the day, you're going to get paid for your trip. And at the end of the day, your customers are going to be happier catching small catfish because you can catch 100 of them. That doesn't excite you and make you feel good about what you're doing. Your tip's probably going to be better. And we're going to talk about tipping at some point on a show. But it's, and if you're a fishing guide and you're listening to this episode, I've been doing this 23 years. Let me give you some advice.
Yeah. This is some really good advice.
It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about them. And I hear it all the time. And here's another thing. If you as a guide, if you're extremely opinionated about what you like to catch and you're not trying to find out what your customers like to catch, and I'm not trying to say, have this ability to catch all these different kinds of fish, like, for example, I'm not a largemouth guide, so I'm not going to even begin to try to take someone largemouth fishing. But if I'm on a really, 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 really good hybrid bite, but my customers want to go catch catfish because that's what they like to eat and that's what they want to spend their money on, then I'm going to be just as excited about going and catching catfish as I am going and catching a bunch of big hybrids. And if you're going to be a successful guide in this industry at this day and time, in my opinion, you really need to have that mindset instead of the mindset of, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to go catch. So let's go do it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Have you ever had maybe, because I remember, having those customers, for instance, baitcasters, we always, we always had spinner rods, but we'll always, if we're like white bass or striper fishing or whatever, and we'll have our spinner rods, but then we'll bring a couple of baitcasters. You ever had any issues with guys and baitcasters?
Oh my goodness.
I've had a couple, but you know where I'm leading with this.
The baitcaster dilemma. How do I even want to try to describe this?
And if it's without, you're not going to get your feelings hurt.
Without, so here's my take on it. After doing this for as long as I've done this, 75 to 80% of the men that fish on my boat want to throw a baitcaster. About 5% of those that want to throw a baitcaster can throw a baitcaster.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but I think it's something like, if you turn on like Major League Fishing, or you see any, Rapala or Strike King advertisement, very few times do they ever have a spinning rod in their hand. It's always a baitcaster. Yeah. And so I think, they think, to be cool or to be, the guide thinks I'm a good fisherman if I can throw a baitcaster. But here's what I do. So this is what I do. I hide the baitcasters on the opposite side of the console.
Yeah.
And I give them a whole smorgasbord of really nice Shimano or Daiwa spinning reels. And I even ask them what side of the reel do they prefer to reel.
We have to give them. We try not to even offer it.
And
I don't think it's the guy's rods.
yeah, and if they, in the process of asking them what side do they prefer to, because I will change the handles around. I'm not the guy that says, oh, well, you're supposed to reel on the left or you're supposed to reel on the right. That's not how it works. You're supposed to reel on the side that feels comfortable to you.
Exactly.
So if you like a left, and reel it on the left, for God's sake. If you like the right, reel it on the right. And that drives me nuts when I hear guides talk about, well, no, you need to, oh, you need to reel on the side that you want to reel on is what you need to do. But let me say this: I wait for the customer to tell me, hey, I see you got those spinning rods over there, but I noticed there's a bait caster over here. I would really prefer to throw the bait caster.
Yeah.
Those guys that do that typically are the guys that you can hand a bait caster to, and he will make a couple casts with it, get his settings just right, and you don't have to worry about that guy throwing it. The opposite effect is the guy that's really stubborn and says, no, I've been throwing a bait caster my whole life. I want to throw a bait caster. I want to throw a bait caster. And then I don't even like to look. I just let them go to the back of the boat. And it's just,
see them.
No, you hear it first.
Oh, yeah.
You hear them, they throw back, and then you hear this, whoop. and you're like, oh God, here we go. All right. I'm going to act like I didn't hear it. I'm going to act like I didn't even see it,
Yeah.
And then it's funny because then the customer is sitting there and he's got his back to me now, and he's real slowly picking it out, hoping that I didn't hear it or see it. And I, of course, I act like I didn't see it because I don't want him to think that I see it. I'm not the kind of guy, hey, Fred, what happened back there, buddy? I thought you could throw it. I don't do that kind of stuff, but eventually they'll say, hey, Michael.
Yeah. And you said it was spinner.
And yeah, I hand them a spinner rod, take that out of their hand, try to, if I can't get it out, that's just I always say the same thing. I'm going to go watch Grey's Anatomy or Yellowstone or whatever tonight. And while I'm doing it, I'll take my little pair of scissors and I'll cut it out and clean it out. And then I'll put new line on it and call it a day and just, change it over.
Just
so
part of it.
It's part of it.
Yep. How do you deal with, as a guide? I mean, it's very stressful because, I've said this before, all you want to do is put people on fish, put your customers on fish. So how do you deal with, as a guide, how do you deal with a slow day or tough conditions? Like on the boat, 3 Columbia wearing guides, with their hook hats and their, how do you deal, I love Columbia, by the way. How do you deal with slow conditions or tough, tough fishing and stay positive on the boat?
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's just not easy. So I got to ask a question. In your mind's eye, what is a Columbia wearing guide? Because I've been listening to you say this my whole life.
Guys, it's just a term that I came up with. So it's just when I was guiding, and I don't guide on Tawakoni anymore, but I do deckhand with you out on the coast. But when I was guiding, when I have these, these guys book me online, so they know they're getting a woman. They know who they're getting. They're reading my bio. They know what they're going to get. But when they walk down the catwalk and they all have on these Columbia shirts and these, Columbia shorts, these North Face jackets, and these, whatever shoes, and they're pristinely clean, and they've got a backpack with a little, fishing rod hanging out of it or whatever. To me, I'm like, oh man, I've even asked you, will you trade trips with me?
So here's the question. So what is it about
guys over there that have their cat backwards and a beer can in their hand? Because I'd much rather fish with them.
So what is it about a guy who looks like he walked out of Bass Pro Shops that makes you nervous?
It don't make me nervous. I just get this like mental feel of what it's going to be like, and I don't know.
Do you feel
it makes me nervous?
Do you feel like it's like maybe their level of fishing because they look a certain way? Their level of fishing, their expectations are much higher.
Maybe so. I feel like they go, oh, dang man, fishing with a woman, And although I'm going to put them on fish and they're going to have a great time, anyway. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like this could be a weird deal. It's a weird vibe for a woman, being a woman in a boat as a guide and fishing with the majority of men. It's just a weird vibe. I've had guys get in my boat and try to take off. I'd try to drive it. I'll drive. No, you won't. Sit down. Sit your butt right back down there. I got this, or try to cast the rods if we're trophy catfishing or whatever, try to cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we try to handle.
And I guess what you're saying is that, you kind of have, it's almost like a chip on your shoulder in the sense that you feel like, they feel like that maybe they're at a little bit of a disadvantage because they have the woman guide, which in
probably just,
which in reality is not true, but it's actually really cool to have a guide who's a woman who's good at what she does.
Says if you can put people on fish and have a good time on the boat. Because, I've said this before, it's not just the fishing. I mean, you've got to have fish. I mean, you can have a great time on the boat. You could have a great day. The customers are having an awesome time. They're over there just, having a great time. But if you don't put fish in the boat, they're not going to come back. It doesn't matter.
So you're asking about, on a slow day, how do I handle it?
Positive.
I've always said it's 30% fishing and it's 70% entertainment and finding common ground on the boat with the customer. And I'll say this, with that said, with it only 30% fishing, I still have to put a lot of fish in the boat, Yeah. But for me to make it the trip that I feel like is the special trip, I've got to connect with customers. And the cold hard truth is that when you've got bad conditions or the fish aren't cooperating, or anything like that, it creates all this stress. So then it really starts affecting how you smile, how you have a real positive vibe. So what I've learned to do is I try to start making fun of myself.
Yeah. Great quality.
I try to start, saying, hey, maybe you should have been on a different boat today. Maybe you should have been on my wife's boat. Maybe you should have been on Noelle's boat. Maybe you should have been on Jeremy's boat. Right. I try to break the ice and kind of humanize, my struggle, because the struggle is very real. And the end of the truth, I'm devastated on the inside that I'm not able to put them on fish or the fish aren't cooperating. A lot of times you're actually on fish. You can see them, they're there, but they just won't eat, or they just, your bait's too big, your bait's too small, talking about live bait, or, who knows what it is. And there's nothing worse than having that happen. And then you look at your group text, your phone, and it's like, Noel's like, hey, you got 44 already, they're jumping in the boat over here. And then Jeremy's like, yeah, man, I'm already limited out, and then I'm like, I've got 3 fish in the boat, so it's no fun. That's not the fun part of guiding, is when you struggle. And, when you're on the struggle bus, and it's like that comes in waves. It's like, I feel like, like a really good batter, a really good baseball player, they smoke it down, and then all of a sudden they get in a slump, where they can't even hit, a 60 mile an hour fastball. It's like, that's the fishing guide. It's like, you'll run 3 or 4 or 5 trips in a row where everybody just is kicking your butt. Yeah, it doesn't happen real often, but it seems like it does happen, and it happens in 2s and 3s.
How many times has it been the midnight hour and you got the fish?
Yeah.
The last 20 minutes of the trip sometimes, it's just like, whew, thank you, Lord. you're literally going, God, please. Just one.
Oh my gosh!
God, please.
The trip that stands out.
Praying for
the trip that stands out the most was when my high school principal, Bob Anderson, booked a trip with me. We reconnected after 20 years. I had a huge respect for him.
Yeah.
Super good guy. He really spoke into my life as a young person when I was 17, 18 years old. And then we went our ways. He went his way. I went my way. And then we reconnected after 15 or 20 years. He found out I was a fishing guide. He brought his pastor. He was like an associate pastor at church, had his own little ministry thing going or whatever. And then he brought the big pastor, and they have a huge church of 4,000 or 5,000. And so, I don't remember, the pastor's name was Mike, but I don't remember his last name. And I don't remember what church it is, but it's a big church in the Dallas area. And so it was a big deal that the pastor was coming, and he loved to catch fish. But the word on the street was the pastor had no patience at all. He needed to get on fish right away. And I was like, no problem. It's freaking June and the hybrids are jumping in the boat, and, this is going to be a slam dunk, and I'm going to show you guys a great time. Well, let me tell you something. It was a half-day trip, and the trip was supposed to be over at 12:30. Well, at 1:30, I had not stopped looking for fish. We had not fished one time yet at 1:30 p.m. And now the pastor is laying on the back of the skeeter completely asleep. He is snoring, because all I'm doing is scanning the ends of points. And I'll never forget, the feeling I had. And they were so supportive of me. And they were like, we know you're going to find them. We know you're finding them. If we don't find them, we've had a good time. I'm thinking, no, you haven't. Yeah. You haven't had a good time. And I am not kidding you. I got to the Tall Man Timber. It was the only place on the lake. I had been to Cloud. I had been to Sun. I had been to Wolf. I had been to Terry's. I had been to Finger Point. I had been to Bread Bear. I had been to Grimble Pump Station. I had been everywhere that you could be. And I got to the Tall Man Timber, and I'm telling you, every hybrid on Lake Tawakoni was sitting on one end of one point.
Isn't that crazy?
And I stopped, and we dropped live bait down, and everybody's like, why are we stopping? I'm like, we're stopping because we found it. We're going to fish, finally. They're like, well, good. We actually came here to fish. And we dropped down, and there was 5 guys on the boat, and we had our 5-man limit in about 30 minutes.
Oh.
And I felt like the biggest hero in the world. And that, you talk about weight off my chest.
It gives you a lot of anxiety, being out there knowing. I mean, there's a lot of people have jobs that are, police officers, nurses, and you know that.
And that's way stressful than anything I'll go through.
But it is, just for our job as a fishing guide, it can be very stressful.
Yeah.
Because the trip is on you. Like, you've got to put them.
Yeah.
You got to go out there. You got to find them. You got to put them on fish. You got to teach them. You got to coach them.
Yeah. The trip is, and I train my guys to look at it this way. The trip itself is a series of decisions that the guide makes, and one decision builds on the next decision, and it builds. And there's about 6 or 7 big decisions that you make in a trip, and those decisions that you make the trip or break the trip, and you have to make the right decisions every day.
Every day,
and it's not always easy, because sometimes you make the wrong decisions, and then hopefully you can correct it with a good decision. On where you're going, the techniques you're using, one of the things we haven't talked about yet is, how do you deal with customers who, know more than that are stubborn, that don't want to do it the way you want them to do it.
I think I struggled with that more than anybody when I was guiding, because I feel like, a lot of times, you trained me. I mean, I grew up fishing, but guiding and fishing is 2 different worlds, and you trained me. So I was pretty confident in what I did. And I feel like I think that men doubted me on the boat, and so they were always like, we need to do it like this. Or what about over there? Or look, there's some birds over there, and the fish are over there schooling. And I'm like, no, those are coots.
Yeah, those aren't even the right kind of birds. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go over here, guys.
Right. And then,
I mean, I get it.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think the really good guide, who you got to look at the big picture. You got to think a lot of these people that are fishing with you, yes, they are hiring a guide, but they do have a lot of fishing experience.
Yeah.
And they've seen a lot of times, especially 10 years ago when I was guiding as much as I'm guiding now, some of these people that I was fishing with were 20, 30 years older than me, which means they were fishing 15, 20 years before I was ever born. So it was really hard for me as a 31, 32-year-old guide to look at a 55 or 60-year-old experienced fisherman and say, no, sir, I really don't think we need to do that. We need to go over here. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard for me to do. But I knew if I followed the lead of the guy, it would, it would cost us time on the trip, because I knew that wasn't going to work. Okay. So, it's.
I can tell you, it just reminds me of something that we still do, and we do it every summer, and it doesn't really matter what we say. I mean, I guess when we start our trips, you and I, we like to tell our customers how, like channel cat fishing, and when we're fishing with prepared bait, we like to tell our customers how to do it. We show them, like we physically will take the rod, show them, we'll bring up the hook after the bait comes off, when to go, see, look, the guy yesterday kept fishing with a bare hook.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like, I think when we're doing the prepared bait fishing over a baited hole, I feel like that's one of the worst, because what does a customer want to do?
Oh, well, they never want to come up and rebait.
No.
They always want to try to keep their bait down there, because it takes time to reel it up, and it takes time to drop it back down. It's easier just to, after a bite, it's easier just to leave it down there. And that all comes back down to the ability of the guide to develop trust with the customer, that the guide knows what he's talking about, and he's doing. You got to trust the guide, because the guide wants to catch as many fish as you do. Yeah. And also the bait, like you're talking about prepared bait fishing. Yeah. Bait's expensive. It's very expensive. So if I could, after a customer sets the hook, if I could get away with them just leaving it down there, and getting another bite on that bait that's still on his hook or that he thinks is on his hook, then I would do that. I think the good guide who is going to try to retain these customers that are a little more stubborn, that don't want to listen, you just got to be patient. And sometimes you got to let them kind of like do their own thing a little bit and let them see that what they're doing is not working. And sometimes they'll come around a little bit, especially if they'll watch one of their other friends that's on the trip doing it the right way. And then they're hooking them, they're killing them.
Or kids,
You know,
take
sure, yeah.
Kiddos you can teach a kid to
Or a
channel
woman.
fish.
A woman or a kid.
I don't know about all that.
No, I'm telling you.
But you can teach them how to do it, and they will outcatch everybody on the boat.
Absolutely. There's no question.
Not stubborn.
Yeah. They're
not trying to use their own technique. Taking it and throwing it, and I'm like, it's going to come fall right back down to the bottom of the boat, right below the boat. When you're out there with your customers, and they're talking about keeping their fish, what is your goal? What do you try to provide for the customers as far as catching the fish and keeping fish? What is the goal for that?
Well, that's a taboo subject of the word limits, limited out. I think it's,
I try to never say that.
It's,
limit out.
That's a big deal. I hear customers a lot say, hey, hey, Captain, hey, guide or whatever. Hey, Michael, you think we're going to get our limit today, And I think that's something that the industry in itself is kind of set as a standard. You go down the Texas coast and, people talk about catching limits of red snapper. It's kind of out there. One of the issues with Texas is, after fishing with a lot of people from like Kansas and Missouri and Colorado, Wyoming, all those areas up in the north or northeast too, their limits are a lot less than Texas. Texas is very liberal.
Yeah.
And Oklahoma too, and Louisiana. They're real liberal on how many fish we can keep. Yeah. And so, like, for example, like our white bass limit's 25 fish per person. Well, if you've got 4 people on your boat, that's 100 white bass that you can keep. And that doesn't include the hybrid striper, which are 5 per person. And it doesn't include, especially like you're on a full day trip, that doesn't include all the catfish you can keep as well.
Yeah, because we're multi-species guides. So we're on a full day trip.
Yeah.
We're going to go chase hybrid striper, white bass, and channel cat.
So the question is really, how does the customer and even how does the guide determine the success of the trip? Is it based on the fact that you limited out, or is it more based on the fact that you had quality time, you caught fish on the outing, you gained a lot of knowledge from the guy was able to share a bunch of information that you might be able to use on your own boat, your own time. I think every trip's a little different. I think customers tend to base their success differently. But let me say this. I have never had a trip where if we limited out on the target species that we were going after, I've never had a customer say it was a bad trip or a tough trip. Okay. So, and it's the same adage that we use with our guides. Catching fish cures a lot of evil. And what I mean by that is that you can have, if you don't have the best personality, if you're kind of quiet, a little more reserved, which a lot of people are, a lot of guides are. If you're really putting your customers on a lot of fish, you can overcome some of the other things that a good guide typically has. A good guide typically has an outgoing personality. A good guide typically has the ability to find common ground pretty quickly on the boat and can hold a conversation and talk about all that kind of stuff. So if you struggle in those areas, but you have this amazing ability to catch fish, then you can overcome maybe the customer's expectation of it being a trip that maybe they liked or didn't like just because they caught a lot of fish.
And I know there's been a few times where, and it doesn't happen often, but there's been a few times where you've gotten back to the dock and you're getting ready, very few, but getting ready to clean fish and setting the fish up for our dock shot. And then the customer's like, oh, well, I don't want to keep all these fish. Y'all can have them. Or it's, just weird things like that. That's happened a few times.
Yeah.
Why did you keep the fish?
Yeah.
We promote catch and release, y'all. But
yeah, and we do, but you look at pictures and people are like, man, freaking Little John's group over there, they keep a lot of fish, and we do keep a lot of fish. And
we don't. They do.
As far as like what you just said, as far as like getting back to the dock and them kind of like not wanting to keep all the fish that they caught or something, that's frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Like that really upsets me because that's a resource that can't be
That's a resource that's taken and it can't be replenished in the sense. And another thing that's kind of frustrating is we fish with a lot of people, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. Well, we ate fish 2 nights ago.
Right. Yeah.
And it was Ben, Taylor, it was Brittany, Kayla, Aubrey, Allie, you, and me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's 6 or 7 or 8 mouths to feed. 10 medium to small size blue catfish fed all of us, and there was a lot of fish left over.
Yeah.
And I ate a lot of fish.
Yeah.
So
Stepped on fish.
when we come in and we've got 4 people and we have literally bag after bag after bag of fish, and then they take them home, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of fish. I don't know how people can eat that much fish.
I know.
But, that's not necessarily my business. I did my job, we put them on fish. But when they come back 2 weeks later, and then we do the exact same thing, and they take home another 8 gallons of fish, I have to start wondering, is some of this fish going to waste? Yeah. Like, is it freezer burning?
We ask our customers, actually. Our good customers that fish with us a lot, and they'll tell you, oh, well, we give it away. I got a neighbor. I give it away. It's people to church or whatever.
And I'm okay. I'm okay with that as long as that's what's happening. And I think one of the funny things about like when you've got customers and, they've kept a lot of fish is we have an unbelievable fishery at our dock.
Mm-hmm.
That's
something most people aren't going to know about. It's a little something extra.
Well, you got to have a little extra, it's kind of like that.
That's your brainchild, though. All of that whole dock thing that we got going on, that's your brainchild. Tell everybody.
That was a vision I had. Yeah, I dreamed that.
Did you really?
Yes, I dreamed in a dream that I had made a dock that was square.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the boats that worked for the guy, that we ran, all tied up to the perimeter of the dock.
Mm-hmm.
And the dock was floating, so customers could get in and out of the dock, no matter the lake level. It was always comfortable for these, especially our older customers. And I had a vision of all these, cleaning tables that were around this hole in the middle of the dock.
Yeah.
And in the hole was there so that customers could come, because that's where all the guides threw all the discards.
Yeah.
And they sank in one spot, which would concentrate the catfish. And, Tawakoni is the catfish capital of Texas. And I wanted to leave one side open. And in my dream, I saw that one side open of this hole so people could walk up and fish. And it's crazy when we built the lodge and we had the opportunity, we built the exact dock that I saw. And it's funny because actually we're talking about, being on a guide trip, coming in with all these fish, customers keeping a lot of fish, having a lot of fish to clean, which that could be its own episode in itself of cleaning fish and all the things that go into cleaning fish, especially after cleaning fish for a week straight, hundreds of fish. And then there you are with all those fish to clean. You've got a limit of white bass, you got a limit of hybrids, and then, you're throwing, all your discards in the hole. And then customers are dipping their hooks with punch bait and they're dropping in the hole, and they literally are catching catfish till the cows come home. I mean, it's, it is fun. Unbelievable.
And they love it, and they come back for that too. Even if they would go out and have a tough day with catching white bass or whatever, the striper fishing, if it gets a little tough, or even if we go out and do a baited hole and the fishing was to be tough, they're like, that's all right. We'll get them when we get back.
We'll get them when we get
when we get back to the dock.
Or it's even funnier when you're having a really good trip on the lake, and then you start hearing guys talking on your boat saying, hey, Michael, we're having a ball catching these fish, but hey, do you mind if we go back just a little bit early so we can fish the dock a little longer?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, you want to leave doing what we're doing here so you can go back to the dock? And that just tells you how much people really enjoy fishing that dock.
When we get back to the dock, our typical MO is that we come back, we put their fish out, we kind of lay them out kind of a cool way so we can get a memory for them. We get what we call a dock shot. And that's for our customers and for us, we'll post it on our website because that'll help customers, our potential new customers, seeing a daily catch from kind of reminds me of what they do down on the coast. There's a couple of big outfits. What's that one group?
Dolphin dock?
The dolphin dock where they lay out all those fish in a smaller level, and it's smaller.
They do something that we should do.
Go live?
No, they don't go live.
Or have a live video?
They have a live feed that is 24 hours a day. So I think what they have is like a camera that is like, would be mounted like maybe here on the side of the store. Mm-hmm. And there's no sound to it at all.
Say it can't have any sound.
It has no sound, but it's just like a kind of a lower quality, constant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And you just go on to like TawakoniGuideService.com and then you click.
Have this show, yo.
You click the little live feed button and then it loads. And all of a sudden,
you gotta do that.
You have a live feed and you can see, oh, look, they're back. The guides are back. They're cleaning fish. Or, oh my God, I always want to see what a thunderstorm looks like on the lake. Well, this is what it looks like because you can see the thunderstorm. I think it'd be kind of cool to
do that.
To have that. I think people would like. I log into the dolphin. Like if I know if Timmy and that crew down there, they're coming in off a big trip, and I heard that he's coming to the jetties, or I just know that they're going to be in sometime around 3 p.m. I'll check that, and it's really cool because here comes the boat. He pulls in.
There's Timmy.
And then all of a sudden, here come the fish. And I mean, oh man, they must have killed them. Or
so let's share that website so people can check that out. It's not ours. They're people that we know, but
I think it's called dolphindocs.com.
Dolphin Docs.
And if it's not, if you'll just Google Dolphin Docks Port Aransas, then you'll get.
It's pretty cool.
You'll get that, and you can
just see them how to fish.
Yeah,
I fished with them once, right, or twice.
I fished with a couple of times. Yeah,
a couple times. You and some of our other guys.
Yeah, the last time I saw Timmy was when we took the Twin V to Perdido out of Port O'Connor, 185 miles.
Get the Airbnb
out. Man, it's so funny. We pull up to Perdido. You know, it's me, Chet, Jeremy, and Noel. Mm-hmm. And so there's 4 of us. We drove. I'm not going to say how long we drove because we drove a long time. The sea conditions weren't the best. And we're in a 31 Twin V, and we literally got to Perdido right at dark. Mm-hmm. And we got there, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's a because we wanted to have it to ourselves. Obviously, you always wanted to have it to yourselves. And I'm sure Timmy thought the same thing. So we get out there, and of course, the Dolphin Express is already at the floater that we show up to. But it was cool. They were catching fish. We started catching fish. About midnight, 1 o'clock, I hear over the radio, "Hey, Little John, is that you over there?" And I'm thinking, how in the wide world of sports does he know that that's me? You know,
that's funny.
But he did. He knew. So that was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, cool group guys.
Anyways,
it's a lot of fun down there.
Good stuff.
So we started talking about our day before, on the water. Come back, take a dock shot, After the customer leaves, they come up here to the pro shop, they pay, they check out, whatever, and they're gone. And you go back to your boat and you're kind of decompressed for a little bit, clean your boat, get everything ready. How do you, how do you decompress after having either a great day on the water or even a tough day on the water? Like, how do you go on and go, I was just out here for 10 hours. It's a 16-hour day sometimes because we start at 3, get up at 3, catch bait. You fish an 8-hour that day. So now you're in like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And you still got to clean fish, or you have a bunch of fish, 2 hours maybe. So you're at 5. And then you've got to clean your boat,
And you broke off 4 rods. 3 were, backlash. You got to re-rig. You've got all that stuff.
16-hour days coming. So how do you decompress? How do you get ready? How do you mentally get ready to go, okay, I got to do it again? Like, you really have to love fishing.
Yeah. So, right. That's what this is right? Yeah. So I'm sitting here just listening to you talk, and it's taking me to some of these unbelievable days that, they just start running together. Yeah. All I can say is that the guides that do this for a long period of time, what I mean by like years and years and years, and they make a career out of it. This is something that they live to do.
Yeah.
Like,
you can tell the difference.
And you can tell too. Like, I can look at the guys that work for us, and you can look at the ones that are going to go a long time, and the ones that are going to go for a little bit and then they're going to get out. You just know. And so it's one of those things where you have to love it all. Mike Thompson, he always said it best, he goes, when it's time to do, and I'm not going to say the word he said, but when it's time to do guide stuff, guide, everybody wants to fish, but when it's time to do guide stuff, it sucks.
Yeah.
And, and it's, and it is, because here's the deal. We started the episode with this. We're going to end the episode, with this, because we're starting to wind down anyway, is that tomorrow you got to give the customers the very best trip that they've ever had. Even though you're 15 or 16 hours in today and you're exhausted, and, you were talking about having a really good trip or really having a really bad trip. I talked about at the beginning of the episode, you got to have a reset button. The reset button has to be hit. And you have to find a way to completely reset and start over as fresh as you were the day before, or fresher. And because those customers that are coming, they deserve the fresh Michael Littlejohn, the fresh Jeremy, Robinson, the fresh Noelle Barr, not the one that's worn down. And you have to, and for me, I find that strength in the Lord, because there is no way that I can do all that on my own. I ask the Lord, Lord, please give me strength to renew, to reset, because you never know, these people that you have in your boat the very next day, they may need a good fishing trip, but they may need a lot more than that. They may need a day on the water to see God's creation, to see, maybe a guy that loves his career, loves his job, loves life, is passionate about life in general, passionate about people, that's connecting with people. And maybe that's just what they need to maybe get through something that they're going through, And, so you just never know what people are going through. And, we've been blessed to be able to do what we love to do, and also try to make a difference, in people's lives. Just by loving what you do, and loving life, and loving, God's creation, and being able to, take it one day at a time and give people the best, the best trip that you can give them.
There's nothing like, getting customers on the boat and leaving Open Water Lodge and heading out and sunrise, and you're just like, yep, that's his artwork, and we get to see that. This is our death.
It's it's amazing. It really is. And I think that's one of the perks of being a full-time fishing guide, is that you do get to have the best office view.
Amen.
That you can have. Unfortunately, that comes with a lot of sun damage to your face, and it comes with a lot of elements that you don't like working in. We're actually going to do an episode coming up pretty soon about all of the elements that we work in, and what it's like working in 110 degree heat and, 10 degree freezing cold weather, for hours, 8 hours at a time, sliding on ice to get to your stuff. So we're actually looking forward to that episode. But speaking of episodes, the next episode that we're gonna do coming up in a few days is we're gonna be talking
Tuesdays.
We're gonna be talking about guide etiquette, and we're gonna be talking about, sharing the water with civilian fishermen. How close is too close? How close, not only to a guide, but just in general. If you're a civilian fisherman and you're fishing, and there's another civilian fisherman, how close should you guys be fishing to each other? And is there a such thing as getting too close, and what spooks fish and what doesn't? So we're going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be a little controversial. I don't know if we're going to rub people the wrong way or not, but it needs to be, it needs to be talked about. And there's a lot that's been said. I've actually had a lot of lay fishermen, a lot of civilian fishermen that have talked to me about this episode coming up. They actually all wanted to be on the episode, but we only have 2 microphones. So it's going to be really fun.
Be a spirited conversation.
Yeah.
We're excited about this. All right, y'all. We appreciate you hanging out with us for this little over an hour. And we are putting out new episodes for our podcast every Tuesday. So you can start seeing them on Tuesdays. So.
All right. Well, you guys enjoy. And if you are a fishing guide or if you're a person that's looking to getting in to guiding, and you heard this and you have been highly discouraged, we apologize.
Yeah. Sorry.
But it is the greatest job in the world. It's also just the hardest job in the world. So.
Very rewarding.